In 1710, there was a new terror on the streets and back alleys of London that held its inhabitants in its grip. It wasn't a plague or even an invasion. There were reports of a gang of upper-class people that were terrifyingly violent, who had wealth and social status, who called themselves the Mohawks, making attacks on innocent passers-by during the dark hours of night. Political tensions at the time contributed to wild exaggerations in press accounts of their antics and crimes. Evidence suggests that this sort of violence with which the Mohawks were charged, attacking men and women alike, constituted at least as an important part of the subculture of some young male members of the elite, as did the libertine behaviour conventionally associated with certain young people at the time. The most probable explanation for the name Mohock derives from a visit of 4 Iroquois chiefs from Canada who met with Queen Anne in an audience in 1710. The state visit was sophisticated and highly publicised. Likely, it was the association between the Mohawk and Iroquois and their perceived barbarity. Taking their name from the Mohawks, their activities, which were perhaps sensationalized by the press, were even said to include murder. The situation seemed to have ended 3 years later, when a bounty of £100 was issued by the royal court for their capture. According to Lady Wentworth, they put an old woman into a wooden barrel and rolled her down Ludgate Hill. They cut off some noses, others' hands, and several barbarous tricks without any provocation. They are said to be young gentlemen, and they never take any money from any. This group of wild young men came to prominence with their lack of manners and their outrageous conduct in the theatres, taverns, and coffee houses around Covent Garden, at times creating panic and assailing innocent passers-by at random. After drinking copious amounts of alcohol, they would attack anyone who was unfortunate enough as to walk on the streets. The media frenzy that surrounded the group was intense. The pens of the reporters flowed with stories of the terrifying offences of this rapacious band of men, who were dubbed as the offspring from hell, and, for a brief time, the Mohawks became the subject of what amounted to an 18th century terror alert. The idea that they were an organised club is historically unproven, but a disciplined criminal gang that performed unholy rites was more exciting for the newspaper-reading public than attributing the event to a few drunk students. The leader of one of this disparate and loosely affiliated groups was identified as Rowan Hamilton, someone who was independently wealthy and later became an Irish rebel, and his associates called Hayter, who was the son of a banker, and Osborne, an American, and a third person by the name of Frederick. Clubs have long been a part of the social life of England's young male aristocrats. The Mohawks seem to have been one such group of young gentlemen who terrorised the streets of the city. Present-day Oxford dining societies, like the Bullingdon Club, show that things have not changed a great deal since the Roaring Boys in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. It shows such groups have been around for centuries, but perhaps not as extreme as the Mohawks. Various other gangs of street bullies are said to have existed at different periods, beginning during the 1590s. While little evidence exists for the Mohawks being an organised group with a shared mission of mischief-making, rumours put around suggested that they had one common club-like structure. This idea was not helped by sensationalist newspapers, which ignited a citywide panic in the process. The most fashionable of these groups was presided over by someone known as an emperor, who wore a crescent on his forehead. Do evil for evil's sake was their mantra. The Mohawks had one thing in mind, and that was to injure. To fulfill this, any means were held good. In becoming a Mohawk, the members took an oath to be hurtful, to injure at any price, no matter when, no matter whom, no matter where. Every member was tasked to achieve at least one accomplishment to this end. One was a dancing master, who made the innocent victim jump about by pricking the calves of their legs with the point of his sword. Others knew how to make a man sweat, where a circle of around 6 gentlemen with drawn rapiers would surround a captive so that it was impossible for him not to turn his back upon someone. The man behind chastised him for this by a prick of his sword, which made him spring around, which induced another in the circle to inflict a prick in the back, and warn the person that one of noble blood was behind him, and so on, each one wounding him in turn. When the man, closed by the circle of swords and covered with blood, had turned and danced about enough, they ordered their servants to beat him with sticks. Others hit the lion, as it was called, where they stopped a passenger, broke his nose with a blow of the fist, and then shoved both thumbs into his eyes. If his eyes were gouged out, he was paid for them. These were at the time the pastimes of the richest idlers of London. In people's minds, this ultimately provided a distorted, darker picture of London society, excited by sensationalist journalism. It's fair to suggest that the public's imagination of the Mohawks far eclipsed actual events. By the spring of 1712, the Mohawks had galvanized so much fear of the sort of street violence that was endemic, eliciting contemporary responses ranging from the political to the literary, culminating in a royal proclamation on March the 18th, where Queen Anne issued a reward of £100 to aid in the discovery of the culprits who conspired together to disturb the public peace in an inhumane manner, without any provocation, and had assaulted and wounded many of Her Majesty's law-abiding subjects. Unfortunately, this proclamation had little noticeable effect. A week after the proclamation, Sir Roger Coverley, who feared going out after dark, decided to go to the theatre to see a play, something he had not done for some years. A friend of his asked him if it would be dangerous going home late, in case the Mohawks should be around. His reply that the previous evening he thought that he had fallen into their hands, as he noticed 2 or 3 large men that followed him halfway up Fleet Street and slowed down behind him to follow. Sir Roger managed to lose them at the end of Norfolk Street and get safely home. He arranged that an army captain friend of his would accompany him to the play in his coach. The captain arrived at the appointed hour and told Sir Roger that he should fear nothing, as he had with him a sword that he had previously used in battle. Sir Roger's butler and 2 servants, together with the coachman, equipped themselves with oak staves for the journey in order to protect their 2 passengers, and they were conveyed to the theatre without incident. At the end of the performance, Sir Roger and his guests had a safe return journey, again without any incident. Aspiring playwright John Gay's first offering in 1712 was titled The Mohawks, described as a tragicomic farce that was never performed on stage due to its controversial subject matter. It satirizes the feared but largely exaggerated Mohawks, depicting organized gangs who terrorize the streets of London with lurid violence and disorder. Though it did not reach production on the stage, as theatre managers were reluctant to produce the work of a then unknown author with controversial content, it was subsequently published sometime later as a pamphlet. What is known is that there was a general trend of increased street violence around this time. There was certainly to and fro between criminal activities and corresponding responses from the justices of the peace. Violent activity occurred predominantly in Holborn, Covent Garden, Lincoln's Inn Fields, and Red Lion Square. And on March the 11th, 1712, the Middlesex justices ordered the watch to be doubled in order to suppress nocturnal riots. The same night, an attack on a constable called John Bush led to the arrest of multiple assailants, who were later released on bail. Among them, most notably, Lord Hinchinbrook and Sir Mark Cole. Their bail came to £1,500 and £900 respectively, and their arrest and the enormity of those sums likely only fueled the rumours of marauding gangs of the elite, creating disturbances in London. Various other groups of street bullies have terrorised London at different periods in history. Having emerged in 1771, the group of Mohawks came to an end in 1774 after they overdid it and were brought before a judge, and they scattered in the aftermath of their trials. 2 went to America, 1 to Holland, and the last to Paris, marking at last the end of the Mohawks of the 18th century, although it was rumoured that elements held together until nearly the end of the reign of George I in 1727. It would be a mistake to say that they never existed at all, because evidence clearly shows that fears of Mohawk violence were not quite as silly as they've been made out to be, even if there was much exaggeration and invention. The truth seems to lie, perhaps not surprisingly, somewhere between the poles of elaborate conspiracy and complete fabrication.